program. We're partnering with the Office of Neighborhood Life with Samantha right now for this workshop. So I'll be doing part of the presentation and Samantha will be doing part of the presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to stop us and ask. This will mostly be focusing on off-campus housing. If you're here to figure out things about dorms, that's not really what we're doing. But it's useful to know later on if you should decide to leave the dorm on campus. So, let's start.
All right. Hi everyone, I'm Samantha. As you can see, this is my office. If y'all don't know where we work, we are like kitty corner from this building right now. It's a little yellow townhouse on the corner of 36 and N Street. And this is the rest of my team. And we're really here while you're at Georgetown to support you in your time living off campus, on campus as well, but we're here for all things housing and kind of what it means to live in the neighborhood and find a community that you're going to spend your time as a Georgetown student and then beyond as well. So I'll keep my part brief, but I'm really here to talk about some of the things that we encourage students and non-students to do when they're looking for housing out in the neighborhood and then once they've secured housing. So really to start, I like to get a little feel for who lives where. So by a show of hands, I guess, who is maybe a freshman or a sophomore or a junior? Okay, do I have any seniors in the room? Seniors, okay, awesome. Do you all live off campus right now? On campus? Okay.
I'm at University Townhouse.
Okay, fantastic, yes, that's definitely on campus. And then does anyone live out in the neighborhood off campus right now? Yes, okay, awesome, fantastic. So as you're starting to think about moving off campus, and living out in the neighborhood, the biggest thing that we try to emphasize is thinking about the things that you want, the type of neighborhood you want to live in, starting to think about the variables that are important to you. So your budget. I mean, Melissa can talk night and day about that, but that's one of the biggest constraints that people have when they're looking for housing. It's really the research point in time where you're either talking with friends about where you want to live, how close you want to live to where you work, transportation, all of these variables, what your style is. Do you prefer apartments? Do you prefer living in a home, in a townhome, perhaps a group home? Do you want to live by yourself? Do you want to live with a group of friends? And all of these things are important as you're starting to decide where you want to live off campus. And also getting a feel for the community that you want to move into. If you're in a city environment, if you're out here in Georgetown, I know those of you that are seniors, you might not still be living in Georgetown, but those of you that are going to move away, it's important to think about what kind of community you want to be a part of and what are some of those community standards. So prior to choosing a lease, our office has this postcard, and you can grab it after if you want, but it's really important to be choosy. For those of you that are sophomores or juniors and you're thinking about moving off campus, one of the biggest things that we say is don't rush into a lease. There's a lot of landlords and property owners that might put a little bit of pressure saying, oh, you need to secure this property and move in and sign a lease like right away. But we say, no, don't worry, take your time, like do your research, spend time looking at places, go there in person, take the tour of the house, talk to neighbors, talk to friends that might have lived there previously. Really take your time to be choosy because there's so much out there, and of course sometimes we're working with deadlines, but you don't need to rush well a year in advance to secure housing. The other thing that we want to emphasize is the basic business license. So when you're looking for a property in Washington, D.C., an owner or a landlord must have a basic business license in order to rent their property to you as a tenant. So this is something that you can check for free at the Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs. Their system is PIVS. You can type in any address that you're considering renting and you can look up and see if they have a basic business license. This really ensures that the property that you're going to move into has the basic safety requirements, health and safety standards as dictated by the city of DC, really just a minimum. Okay, so it means that this city agency has gone into that property, has done an inspection of the property, looking for all of those things to ensure that yes, this meets our requirements, Nobody's going to be living in like a little corner, you know, next to a radiator or a heater without windows to escape. And that's hugely important as you're looking for properties out in the neighborhood, and especially in DC. And there are other regulatory bodies both in Virginia and Maryland. Our office is not as well versed with those, but we do have partners in the various states, especially Arlington and closer near the university, that are regulating safety measures in the home. So before you move in, it's very important that you read your lease cover to cover. One of the biggest things that we get coming into our office is students at the end of the year, at the end of their lease term, are saying, hey, our landlord is trying to withhold our security deposit. And these are often, especially in Georgetown, they're huge sums of money, often, you know, $10,000 when you have a group home of students living. So it's really important that you read your lease cover to cover and you do a walkthrough of their property. We have these, this is just like a sample walkthrough inspection form, but oftentimes we find it to be one of the most helpful things to, as you're in that process of signing the lease, after you sign the lease, to walk through your house and check on everything and document everything. Take photos of the property, write down any damage you see so that you know and your landlord knows and you've agreed as you're moving into that property that everything is the way that it is, so that you won't be having to cover any damage to the property at the end of your lease term. So make sure you read your lease, because there can be all kinds of things thrown in there that you don't want to have to deal with. We actually had, pretty recently, there was a clause in someone's lease that they just had overlooked, and it was a landlord basically saying at any time while you live here, I can ask you to move out of the property because I'm choosing to sell the property. And the students had to leave because they had signed it. And the minute you signed it, it's a legally binding document. So it's pretty important that you know what you're signing up for. And this is something that kind of just talking about leases, for those of you that are signing and you're thinking about having a subletter, for those of you that are juniors, are you guys planning on living off campus like this summer? Have you signed leases or not yet? Okay. So if you do and your lease term starts in the summer, make sure that you get a subletter. If you're going to get a subletter, make sure that you have some sort of sublet agreement, kind of like a lease, that's going to hold your subletter also to everything in your lease, so that, you know, they can be held accountable also for any damage or fines or whatever happens in that property while you're gone. And also just so that you have, for both your protection and the subletter's protection, you have everything written down and agreed upon that you can go back to. As you're moving into your property, one thing that we emphasize is doing a walkthrough, not only for damage and issues with the house and documenting all of that, but safety, fire safety. So we had a student living off campus 12 years ago. Daniel Rigby passed away in a house fire on Prospect Street. And it was obviously devastating, and one of his housemates established the Rigby Foundation, Friends of Rigby Foundation. Our office works very close with them, and we've been trying hard to educate students over the years. They have a run, they have a ball. It's a great organization, something that you can definitely look into. But they are constantly emphasizing fire safety, especially in Georgetown and some of these places surrounding DC. These homes are so old, and they're not always being refurbished and given the attention that they need to make sure that they're structurally sound, that they're safe. And it turns out that the room that he was living in, it was a basement without any windows, no way to escape. So it's really important that you're thinking about your own safety as you're going through these properties and considering where you want to live. One thing that our office does, if you're local, you're going to be in the area, we have a ton of fire safety supplies. We have fire extinguishers, fire safety ladders. They are like literally filling our little townhouse. So you can come by anytime you want, and you can get a carbon dioxide detector, and any of that equipment completely for free. So we want to make sure that you have all of that as you're living. Last thing to emphasize, as you are figuring all of this out, just kind of back with having a paper trail with your landlord, make sure that you are recording everything, writing everything down. If you have a great relationship with your landlord, we love that. If you're going to go get tea, get lunch, like whatever it might be, fantastic. But just make sure that you follow up with a written email response or something of the sort that's in writing that talks about what you had agreed upon. Lastly, so our office, like I said, is here to be a support to you. We work very closely with all these different bodies to make sure that students are supported here in their time living off campus and beyond. But if you're seniors and you're moving away, there are often these types of resources in any city or place that you go that's going to help you, whether it's Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs, working on the safety stuff. So we have in DC the Office of the Tenant Advocate, and they're a fantastic agency that will give tenants free legal advice about whatever it is. So you can schedule an appointment, you can do a walk-in, and they will have somebody there to talk you through whatever issue that you're dealing with. We consider Washington, D.C. A tenant-friendly city, which is fantastic. They're often on your side, and there's a lot of great resources to help you out if you encounter any sort of troubling issue with your landlord, or you just have more of the legal technical questions surrounding tenant-landlord laws. And then for those of you that are going to possibly still be Georgetown students or even just live in the area, stop by our office because we would love to talk to you about the neighborhood and some of the, the culture and expectations of living out in Georgetown, Arlington. I know Melissa will speak more to that. But we have these, they're called Hoya Living Guides. They're in our office. We produce a new one every single year. And in them, it talks a lot about kind of the standards and the rules and regulations that you should be mindful of living out in the neighborhood, everything from trash to noise, the different laws and ordinances that will affect your quality of life living off campus. It has all of these resources in it. Our office is a resource, and we just want to be able to help you out as you navigate it because it can be a really overwhelming endeavor trying to find housing in the city. So that's all I have for you today. Feel free to ask me questions, and then I'm gonna move on over to Lisa.
All right, so I'll talk about the fun part, money. So it is pretty expensive to move from the dorms to off-campus housing because a lot of things are in the dorms you need to buy, like the bed. If the place is furnished, you might want to check out the bed first because bed bugs is a thing, unfortunately. You'll also probably need to buy a vacuum, lots of cleaning supplies, especially if you lived in dorms that had bathrooms you didn't have to clean. You're going to buy the cleaning supplies for that. Lamps is something that I didn't expect to be expensive, but here we are. Where I moved out, I had to light my own room. I'm like light bulbs and replacing them and lamps and putting it together. So things like that you just kind of don't think about as much. I did a couple trips to the hardware store my first time, so I had to install curtains and things like that because the place I moved into just didn't have them. I had to install my own shelves because it was unlivable otherwise. I don't have people did it for me. So the bookshelf, there's not enough room for bookshelves. So you never look at the place, think how much will I have to do to make this livable? And it's really important to think about that first. Again, is it furnished? Sometimes they have places that are partially furnished. You got a couple nightstands or something like that. Sometimes it's fully furnished, like if that's a sublet, like completely everything is there if someone's gone for a year or a couple months or something. And again, upkeep, if you're gonna be constantly replacing a light bulb, your landlord has that in the lease that you're replacing all the replaceable things during your time there, it adds up. So be sure to check the lease and see what you are responsible for as a tenant. As Samantha mentioned, I live in Arlington, so I can speak a little bit about living off campus versus just close by in DC. So a thing to make sure is that you have easy access to Georgetown if you're a student or if you're working into DC. It's really, really tempting to take an apartment building that you have to I'll walk 20 minutes to the bus and catch that to the metro, and then I'll go in. It's like your commute's going to be awful. So you really need to think about what you're willing to give to your commute and how much more that's worth to you in rent. For example, I live in a place that is close to the metro and close to a bus line that goes directly to Georgetown at 38B. And to me, it is worth it to pay higher rent because I'm not spending a whole lot on late night Ubers if I feel risky taking 3 buses to get back where I need to go. I used to live in a place where I had to metro, bus, walk, and it was pretty rough. Like emotionally, your commute can start to take a toll on you. Also, if you're a bike commuter like me, living next to a bike trail makes it super easy to just hop on and go, and it's a lot safer. Something else to consider is if you're living off campus, is what the apartment building has already. For example, it probably has Wi-Fi connectivity if it's a newer apartment building, so you can just automatically purchase Wi-Fi from Comcast or RCA and plug it in. In my older building I recently moved into, I had to install it myself, which cost $80 for the install. Again, and I had to purchase the equipment and everything, and I had to do the installation. So you need to budget that if you want Wi-Fi, which as a student is pretty much a necessity. When looking for places, a common place to go is Craigslist, especially for group houses or rooms or sublets. I advise a little bit of caution there just because scams do happen. If something is like $500 for a beautiful room in Roslyn, no, that's just not going to happen. And even if it sounds a little bit too good to be true, not just completely false or absurd, still look into it. If they're asking for an application fee through Craigslist, through PayPal, no. Like, you really need to be a little bit smart about this and understand that people can be dishonest, and that's an issue that I myself have looked at and been like, no, not doing that. Always do the walkthrough. If you're abroad or something and coming back, have a friend on their phone walk through. Again, the pictures are really necessary, especially if something is broken. They're like, oh, that there's a crack in that window. Take a picture of it, so they don't do that. Like they don't fine you for that at the end of the weeks. And I noticed that for every apartment building I've gotten, there's been a checklist, and there's to everything. I always been content like paint was chipped. You know, bathroom sink only had hot water right now, or something like that, so nothing can be blamed on you. So you all should have gotten this question to ask about your apartment. Did you all get that? Okay, great. So there's a couple I wanted to just point out in particular. Is there a policy on rent increases? For example, I got one, and they chalked it up to cost of living increase, or just thinking, you know, like, I think they said property taxes rose or something. So that's something that popped up that I had to adjust to. Are utilities paid on a separate check or with the rent? Really important, because that either means you don't have to watch every single drop of water, or you can just kind of live a little bit more at ease. So currently I live in a place that everything is included in the base rent price. This is also really important when you're looking on, say, Craigslist, and they say the group house is $1,000 a month, and you think that sounds great for a room, and utilities are $300. You're like, wait a second, someone's giving off some money. So it's really important to add it all together at the end. And sometimes even if you're doing your budget, just add in your cost of rent. And if it's worth it to get that place that's really cheap, 2 buses away, and you're gonna be Ubering a lot, so you hate taking the bus late at night. It's something to be honest with yourself and what you're going up with. Is renter's insurance necessary? Very important question to ask, because that can add up to be a couple hundred a year possibly, depending on what they're asking you to have. I have it just because it's a good idea to have that. I've had friends who have been robbed or whatnot in their apartment buildings. They did get their money for their laptop back with their renter's insurance. Is subletting allowed? It's kind of already discussed, but you don't want to be the person that just went to the landlord like, well, we thought it would be fine, because now you're breaking a legal document if you do subletting, and they said no subletting. A way to find subletters, DC has so many interns that I've never heard of a person having a problem finding a subletter for their year-long lease during the summer. There are a lot of Facebook groups. There are ones that are simply for DC interns if you're looking to sublet your place. Or if you have friends saying, I don't know what to do, send them to these Facebook groups. Again, use caution. And also work that into your budget, you know, travel distance. Like I said, it's not worth it to take 3 buses to get somewhere if it's a little bit cheaper than living closer. Next page. Has there been any trouble with electricity, Wi-Fi, or cable? Also good to note, if you can't get cell phone reception somewhere, maybe you don't consider it, also because in case of emergency. Sometimes basement rooms don't have cell phone reception. Sometimes very, very, very thick concrete walls don't have reception if you're very deep inside the building. And like I said, I had to install the own Wi-Fi cables and everything. It cost me an extra $80. I had to wait a couple of weeks to do it. So a couple of weeks ago, I was just, you know, living like a caveman with books. So gas or electric, some people are uncomfortable with gas given there are risks with having gas stoves, but it's a little bit mitigated now. But some people are comfortable with that, so you need to check that. How many keys do you get? Really important, because I know couples who move into 1 bedrooms and they hand them 1 key and they're like, great. So you have to figure in the cost as well as making copies of keys. Side tip, I've noticed that Home Depot does not really make really good copies of keys. I've had much better luck going to small, locally owned hardware stores and getting copies made there, because they also have a return policy and it just doesn't work. A lot of them do, I can't say all of them do, but the ones I've been to do. Pest control, see who's responsible for paying for that, because I've heard of people who had to pay for it themselves if there were multiple visits, because the landlord then said it was on them to keep a cleaner house. They only do the first pest control visit. So be sure to check that in your lease. Oh, are the options and conditions of breaking your lease? Often it's because you have to move, either due to a job or someone in your life moving, you have to move with them. Look that over in the lease. Some leases are very flexible. For example, mine is that if I decide I need to leave, all I need to do is find a new tenant and I pay nothing. So I either just keep paying the rent, or if I find someone tomorrow, it's just a swap out. So that's a really flexible lease that I'm enjoying having. But some of them, you absolutely cannot break. You just have to pay the rest. So it's important to look at that, especially if you're considering maybe leaving the area in the next year or two. Know your laws. So if there are discriminatory practices you suspect are happening, or things aren't quite ADA compliant, and you need that in order to live there. There are plenty of offices in DC you can report that to. I can't think of any on the top of my head. I just know that they exist. But
Yeah.
like I'm sure any, especially the tenant advocate, will know ADA compliance, and if you feel like there's any sexual orientation or racism or sexism going on, just discriminatory practices. And quick note. So like I said, I live in Arlington, so a couple of places that I've heard of students living, including myself. So Rossland is right across the river. It is a little more expensive. It's right next to DC, but students can just walk across the campus. The walk across the bridge is about 15 minutes. And also the GUTS bus goes directly there, and the GUTS bus is free, so it's really attractive for students who live there. If you get a little bit further out, the neighborhoods are called things like Clarendon and Virginia Square and Volstead. That you will require a bus to go on, but there's a bus line that drops off right on M Street, right in front of Georgetown Cupcake and all those kinds of places, so you can just walk right over the campus. There are a lot of neighborhoods in Arlington that are only bus accessible and not metro accessible, and like I said, that's something you have to wager with yourself. If you have a car, then I think it's a lot more reasonable, but I have not owned a car in the 7 years I've lived in DC, because I've always kind of made that decision to live closer to a metro. Whether or not WMATA is working that day, if I can work with the metro, it depends, but I have enjoyed the car-free life so far. And so it's up to you if you decide you want a car after or not. That will help you decide where you're living. Oh, roommates. So splitting utilities with roommates, you really have to get that stuff written down. And I've seen the cheesy whiteboard that say this person knows this much and this person knows this much. But it works most of the time as long as everyone agrees to be accountable. That also goes for chore charts, but that's a separate issue. So, like I say, read everything in writing and just make sure it splits accordingly. Usually having one person kind of in charge of that is a little more helpful. The person that collects the rent checks or manages the bank account and such. If you have any specific questions, especially about Arlington, I can help out after the class, or any general questions. Yes.
I'm here on behalf of a friend that couldn't make it. Is there a list of any places that are just for fall housing only? Because
That'd be interesting. I think subletting might be the best. But what do you think? Fall housing only?
You said for fall housing?
only, yeah.
You mean more like searching for housing?
Yeah,
Like-
I don't know if you have a special list, because a lot of people, they just need full housing. And then they either graduate in December or spring semester,
So for subletting, one of the great things is there is a Facebook group for Georgetown students that is in regards to subletting. That's not something that's managed by our office. We do have OCH listings. I didn't mention that previously. It's the first one for Be Choosy, what I mentioned. So we have that website, and that is only for Georgetown students, faculty, and staff. There's all kinds of listings. It changes every single day. It doesn't cost anything to log in and create a profile. But there won't be as many. Often those are mostly like full year-long leases that are put up there as listings from property managers.
2 semesters.
Usually it's like a 12-month lease. Every now and then you'll find shorter months, but there will sometimes be sublets as well on that. And depending on the time, if somebody wants, it could just be a conversation with the landlord too to see if they're open to having a shorter term. But we know that Georgetown students that sublet, generally it's word of mouth, it's switching with friends that are studying abroad, or it's using that Facebook sublet group. But there's also, so for example, for a lot of our graduate students here at Georgetown, we're trying, because there is no on-campus housing, we're trying to figure out ways to help them find housing. And there are places out there that will do short-term leases. One, for example, one that comes to mind is We Live, and we're trying to develop a partnership with them right now. They're over in Crystal City, and they're right near the Crystal City Metro. And they have pretty fantastic rates. If you're a Georgetown student, faculty, or staff, you can actually, I think, I have to check on faculty and staff, but I know Georgetown students can get those great rates. And it's more like community style living, where it's like very small spaces, like personal spaces, and then big communal spaces. So it's more of just like that, like kind of trendy, like community feel of living in an apartment building. But they can do any sort of lease. Like they could do like a 2-month lease. So there are buildings and places like that that are serving people like students and such that might not want to be there for a full 12 months.
What's the name again?
It's called We Live.
We Live?
I actually
Yes.
toured it.
Oh, did you?
I was considering it when I moved back from France because I needed like right away at least. And it's like a giant dorm, honestly. But it's like above, so people that are not students live there. They can be, but it's usually older people who are older than 22 or so that are living there. But they've furnished the bed. You can have things, you can choose which rooms based on the layout. They accept couples and single people as well. I think there were some families there too. And it is like a fancier dorm and very trendy, very like communal living. And I think it was, they had the, again, like you said, the leases that were kind of up to you or a lot more flexible than regular 12-month lease. And there are buses that go from Crystal City up to Roslyn, so.
Are there, sorry, just like the graduate student housing like that, what are other places you might suggest to look for that kind of stuff, especially with like the flexible leases? I don't know if that's like a thing anywhere else.
So that's hard because that's something that like we're definitely working on. And so we have another partnership with a building over in Roslyn that's called the Virginian Suites. And we have like 44 units for graduate students, and that is also including faculty and staff. So if you are going to be a Georgetown student, and that partnership is up in the air, but that's just an example of something that we're trying to do where you can sign 9, 10, 11, or 12-month leases. But
A month to month.
you cannot do month to month. You can do month to month after like after you sign the first original lease, but you have to do at least 9 for the first one. And so I wish I had like a great list for you, but it's probably just going to take a little bit more research to try to figure out which apartments, I think it'd probably be more apartment complexes, but it's always worth asking properties that you find on the various platforms for housing. It's worth reaching out to them and seeing if they can do a 6-month, a 9-month lease, so you don't have to worry about getting a subletter.
Yeah, do they have a shuttle that goes, don't they have a shuttle, or do they not have a
The
shuttle?
Virginian Suites?
Yeah.
They do have a shuttle, yeah. We have one of our GUTS buses goes.
And also, I've had luck with the Realtor.com app. That's how I found my current place, because they do personal listings and people subletting their apartments, or if they're leasing or subletting their condos, as well as authentic, apartment buildings. It's also good to, and it sounds a little bit creepy, but hear me out, like look at the GW or the George Mason or the American University pages, because often it's just people trying to find housing, right? So you can be living with GW students and they're right across the bridge, right?
What was the realtor you were with? I just.
So I was with Joven Realty, but I found them through the Realtor.com app. So it's a phone app, and you just plug in your area, and all these little listings pop up within your price range and what you're looking for. So I was looking for a single bedroom in Arlington, so that narrowed out all the rooms that require you to have a single bedroom. And the single bedroom was in a bedroom in a house. I was looking for a group house, so it took away all these apartments I didn't really want to go into. Took away things not near a metro or bus, since I don't have a car, and it was helpful for filtering that out. If you're looking
What's
for
the name again? I'm sorry.
Realtor.com, the app you can download for your phone. Just look it up in the App Store. And like I said, look at other Facebook groups. There are also specific groups. Like I remember there are people with pets looking for housing, because often a lot of apartment buildings will kind of fight you on that if they don't want you to have a pet. And you're like, well, I have my cat, and they just won't let you move in. And I don't recommend sneaking it in, because guys, people do that and they get caught. It's not a good idea. There's fines. I know there's Career Housing DC to find people that are friendly. There's government workers who kind of just want to work with other government workers I've seen. So all these different kind of niche Facebook groups, if you want to find people that you can work with, or at least find housing from.
Is there, my friend said they might get a pet dog that's more than 45 pounds. Is there a general rule? Like, is there a security deposit, or you pay more per month, or what? Maybe you could help me on that.
From what I've seen, it really just depends on the apartment and what their policy is. Some will allow smaller pets, but it would really be specific to the different place.
And they're usually pretty upfront about that, especially the smaller buildings. Also, they don't like the loud barking dogs. They might have dogs that they assume breeds will bark more, so they say they don't want these breeds. And for example, the building I used to live in, that was like a high tower, like 26 floors. It was a $500 pet deposit, so, and then $50 a month per pet. So it was pretty expensive, so you really need to budget that in as well if you have a pet. Any other questions? If not, we're sticking around for a little, I'm sticking around a little bit after, I know, to head out. And feel free to take as much pizza and sparkling water as you'd like. And our next event is in March. It's a credit event, but we'll send out an email as well